to mind a word that you wanted to give more energy and more life to. And as I mentioned, this is one of our unity practices. It is a universal truth, and you've probably heard it spoken in many different ways. Attention goes where energy flows. What you focus on grows. What goes around comes around. So this practice of mindfully choosing where we put our attention is something that we can incorporate into our everyday lives in big ways, in small ways, in long-term ways, and short-term ways, like just a word for the day. We are influencing our life experience all the time. So this practice helps keep our minds and our hearts in a positive, creative flow. Hafiz, a Persian poet, says this: "What we speak builds the house we live in." What we speak builds the house we live in. So choosing our focus and intention is something, like I said, that we can do in many, many ways. One easy way that I incorporate this is every morning before I even get out of bed. So as soon as I wake up, I give thanks that I woke up, because not everybody did, right? And then I just spend a little bit of time bringing to mind things to be grateful for. Just big and little, whatever's on my mind, I just allow that to come out. And then I look at what the day looks like ahead of me, what's coming up, what might be going on. And I take some time to think about what word, one of these intention words that we were just talking about, could I conjure up for today that will help me and move me smoothly and joyfully and calmly through the day that comes. It helps remind me on what I do want to experience. So as we know, focusing on what we don't want or what we don't like doesn't actually push that away. It actually just brings it even closer to us. It pulls us it attaches us to what we don't like. So let's remember to put our attention on something that we do want to create more of. So referring to this word as the day goes on is such a great experience, because I find myself off track. It's like, I can fall into worry or concern or impatience, things like that. And when I do, I've learned to recognize that as a sign that I'm not in alignment with certainly my principles, and probably not with the word that I selected for the day. So setting this intention, choosing this one word is really a form of affirmative prayer. And in a couple of Sundays from now, we're going to be taking a whole service to talk about what that is. But for now, even one positive word that you put before you, that you speak, is a prayer. That's a daily practice. We can do that every morning. Find that word. I also have a yearly practice that I use in my ministerial work. Every month I submit a report of my activities to the board. And on the top of that report is a scripture verse that I've selected for the year. And it's my foundation piece, it's my go-to piece, it's what, is above everything that I'm doing. And so it's quite fun, actually, as I know that January is approaching, to start looking through scripture and finding, just something that resonates with me, having no idea, of course, what the year will bring. So this is the one I chose in January 2020. It's from Malachi. "Put me to the test and see, I will open up the windows of heaven for you. I will pour out a blessing so great you won't have enough room to take it all in. Put me to the test and see, I will open the windows of heaven for you. I will pour out a blessing so great you won't have enough room to take it all in." That's a challenge, isn't it? Put me to the test and see how the blessings pour out. So I chose this in early January, and then 6 weeks later, we find ourselves in this place now of physical distancing and virtual spiritual community. So I am putting it to the test, and I'm bringing my resilience and my faith and my reliance on Source up a few more notches, right? And I'm already seeing the blessings that are pouring out. And I have another overarching phrase that's really more like my life for now. Always can change, right? But right now, and for quite some time, it has been my life kind of phrase. So we just sang it in our song, Spirit-led, Spirit-fed. The first time I heard that phrase, my whole body just went, yes, yes. You know that feeling when your heart leaps a little bit? It could be hearing something, a beautiful poem. It could be looking at an amazing piece of artwork. It could be the voice of someone special to you. It could be remembering something that happened in your life. There's immediate resonance, right? There's something in us that just smiles. Before my ordination, we were all asked, all the ordinants were asked, what we would like to have behind us on the huge stage at Unity Village when we walked up to be ordained. And I didn't have to think for a second. It's like, I want Spirit-led, Spirit-fed. And for those who traveled to Unity Village for my ordination, you probably remember that. So and there's a picture of me standing on stage with Spirit-led, Spirit-fed behind me. I also had it engraved on my Bible. When I first heard it, it really piqued my spiritual curiosity. What does that exactly mean? How would I live my life like that? What things do I need to let go of to allow Spirit-fed to express itself more fully in my life, to be a way of life for me? So it's been pretty much like a 20-year question that I've lived with, and it guides me and it also challenges me, and that's what I like about it. Well, let's start with the word spirit. I hope you've noticed in Unity that we are given lots of personal freedom, really in all things, and especially in what we name that a divine presence. Finding a word for God if that word does not work for us. As Unity ministers, we are challenged and called to use many, many different words for this really indescribable presence. So, we say source energy or divine mind or God or spirit, right? Those kinds of things. So I encourage you to find a word, or maybe it's a couple of words that really resonates with you, that describes, like I said, the indescribable, something that rings true for you, that, where your heart goes, yeah, that's the one. Many of us grew up in faith traditions that had very specific languaging about God, and many of us left those traditions, as we matured. So I came up from a family that went to a local church every Sunday. It was not a terrible experience. It was a kind place. I was in the choir and in Sunday school and had some friends there. But as soon as I was old enough to say, I don't want to go anymore, I stopped going. Because even though it was okay, I couldn't find the relevance or the practicality of what I heard on Sundays and what I was experiencing in my everyday life. So, it just nothing really clicked for me. But for me, the word God was neutral. It didn't mean anything, nothing bad or nothing good. But just because I left traditional church doesn't mean that I was still not longing for a spiritual path. It was just a little bit harder to find back then. Now, one of the projects that I've been doing at home in this time that we have at home is to drag out some totes that I've had stored for, at least 20 years. I haven't looked into for probably 20 years. I have these 2 totes. And so I pulled one of them into the house and opened it up and started going through all the little memorabilia and historical items, what do you call them, artifacts from my life, my earlier life. But one of the things I found in there I had totally forgotten about was letters that my mom saved, letters that I wrote home when I left home when I was 18, really into my 20s and 30s. And there are hundreds of them. I didn't know that she was doing that. I guess when she passed and I was going through her stuff, I thought, oh, these are my letters. And I probably put them in that tote and never looked at them. So I've been going through these letters and reading them, and it's quite an experience to see what was on my mind as an 18, 19-year-old in New York City working at a crisis center, and in my experience at Friends World College when I traveled around the world and lived in different cultures, and how I was struggling to make a living by myself. And of course, what's also interesting is all the things that weren't in the letters, because, there's some things you never tell your parents about, all the hitchhiking and all that kind of stuff. But what I came across were things like this. When I was 16 years old, I went to Washington, D.C., and I sent my mom a postcard of an exquisite mosque that I had visited. And on the postcard I wrote, "This is such a beautiful place. I sat here for hours." I also found brochures from Self-Realization Fellowship, where I visited many, many, many times in Southern California, from the Theosophical Society, from Hindu temples, from other spiritual paths and programs that they were offering. So all these things I was drawn to, but they didn't take the form of traditional Christian church. So I think that's when perhaps when I heard those words, Spirit-led, Spirit-fed, they resonated so strongly with me. And even after all these years, I'm still drawn to the challenge of living a Spirit-led, Spirit-fed life. So what draws your attention? What speaks to your heart? What is your word for the divine everything, all it is? You don't have to figure that out right now. But I'd like to do an exercise over the coming week. So the first step is get a piece of paper with lines on it and a pen. And I'm asking you to do that right now. I'm going to go get mine. I'll be right back. What I'd like you to do is on the left-hand side, just write Sunday, leave a couple spaces, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, down the left-hand side. Okay, so this week, starting today, I'd like you to make a note of a highlight of the day. Just a few words. Something that warmed your heart. Something that made you smile. Just one thing. Could be the hummingbirds coming to the feeder. It could be amazing flowers that you have growing in your garden. It could be a call that you had from a friend, or an email, or a great meal. So just one thing for the day, but the highlight of the day. Like, what is the coolest thing, the best thing that happened to me today that really made me smile? So we're just going to do this for each day of the week coming up. I'll do this as well. And next Sunday, We're going to take a look at them and see what this tells us.